Did somebody say gimmick? That's right, I'm talking about gimmicks today on this video. And I'm not talking about gimmick matches like the Hell in a Cell, the Elimination Chamber, or Inferno, or First Blood matches. I'm talking about wrestling gimmicks. Wrestlers who created an alter ego, so to speak. They created a different character and gave it to us inside the squared circle. And the 80s and the 90s truly shined with gimmicks. WCW and WWF was full of gimmicks back in those days. And in today's wrestling, the gimmick is kind of a thing of the past. And in my personal opinion, I think that the gimmick is truly needed in wrestling. You have a lot of wrestlers nowadays who try to act like they're selves in the ring. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, because there's not. But we're talking about pro wrestling here. We all know that it's the ultimate male soap opera. So why not bring us characters that we can actually invest our time and effort into and believe in? And like I said, it's like the gimmick is null and void nowadays. And it really saddens me to have to say that. But, you know, regardless, I'm going to talk about some of the greatest gimmicks, some of the worst gimmicks, and wrestlers who've actually had multiple gimmicks throughout their career. And I'm going to get into all of that right now. First, let's talk about some bad gimmicks. There have been tons of bad gimmicks, and forgive me if I don't mention one of your favorite or least favorite gimmicks, because there's so many to talk about that I can't possibly fit it in this whole video. So I'm going to briefly discuss a few of each. So we had some bad gimmicks in wrestling, that's for sure. Disco Inferno. Hold on. Now before I even start talking, I'm not saying that any of these wrestlers were actually bad at what they did in the ring as far as the wrestling was concerned. I'm just saying that maybe their gimmick was a little bad. But Disco Inferno, not really a bad wrestler, but damn, he had a disco gimmick. And that was in the late 90s in WCW. And wow, he had probably one of the worst theme music of all time. Another, Duke the Dumpster Droese, the WWF. They had a lot of gimmicks in the WWF, and Duke the Dumpster Droese was probably one of the worst of its kinds. WCW had a gimmick wrestler by the name of Glacier. Kind of like a Mortal Kombat character. I don't know what they were thinking. The guy was pretty good as far as his karate skills was concerned. I mean, he studied martial arts, but the gimmick was just kind of dumb. It didn't really work, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Johnny B. Bad in WCW, who later on went to the WWF as Mark Marrow, and had an actually pretty good feud with Hunter Hearst Helmsley. They were feuding over Sable. But Johnny B. Bad, very flamboyant, looks just like Little Richard. Yeah. Let's see, PM News. Does anybody remember PM News? Well, if you don't, let me tell you, PM News was the original rap master. You know, John Cena, when he first came out, he had the rap gimmick. Well, PM News in the early 90s in WCW had a rap gimmick. He was a big, husky wrestler. He actually sucked in the ring. His gimmick was terrible. And, yeah, PM News. What more can I say? Okay, the Repo Man. We all know the Repo Man from the WWF. He was a repo man. He repossessed your possessions. He had tire tracks going down the back of his jacket. It was very humorous. God. Now, the Repo Man was also a former member of Demolition, if memory serves me correct. So you can see where he went from greatness, being a part of one of the most legendary tag teams, to being a jobber, the Repo Man. Okay. Probably the most notorious bad gimmick of all time, the Shockmaster. Shockmaster was played by the former Tugboat of the WWF, and also known as Typhoon. Shockmaster wore a stormtrooper type mask, spray painted in glitter, and it was just god awful. The American Males, Buff Bagwell and Scotty Riggs, the Dynamic Dudes, Shane Douglas and somebody, I don't even remember the other guy's name, Van Hammer, the Renegade, WCW's version of the Ultimate Warrior, just terrible. The Boogeyman, the Booty Man in WCW, who was also known as Brutus the Barber Beefcake. I mean, he went from Brutus the Barber Beefcake to the Booty Man. Okay, now let's talk about some great gimmicks. Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, awesome. The Natural Disasters, Typhoon and Earthquake, fantastic. Money Incorporated, the $1 Million Man and Irwin R. Shyster, the combination of those two was fantastic. The Ultimate Warrior, The Rock, Demolition, like I said a minute ago, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Razor Ramon, Sting, Tatanka, The Undertaker, Mr. Perfect, Ravishing Rick Rude. There have been so many great gimmicks. Now, let's take a few moments now and talk about wrestlers who have had various gimmicks throughout their wrestling careers. There's one man in particular that probably breaks the mold when talking about the gimmick, and that man is Mick Foley. Mick Foley has been known as Cactus Jack back in WCW. Then he went to ECW, still going as Cactus Jack. He came to the WWE as Mankind. Then he reincarnated Cactus Jack again. Then he brought in his other persona, Dude Love. Then he started calling himself Mick Foley. So when he was in the WWF, he was doing all three gimmicks at the exact same time. Talk about a versatile person. He sometimes would even do the same gimmicks in the same night. It was just freaking amazing. Cactus Jack, Mankind, Dude Love, and Mick Foley. Oh, wow, Mick Foley is probably one of the greatest of all time, and you know, him having all those gimmicks just goes to show you. Now, Dude Love wasn't exactly the best gimmick, but you know what? He did the best he could with it. Triple H is another wrestler who had multiple gimmicks. He first came onto the scene in WCW as Terra Rising. That's right, Terra Rising, but it was two words like Terra Rising. Then he went to the WWF as Hunter Hearst Helmsley. We all remember the snob persona that he played. Then he turned himself into the game Triple H, and that's when he really made his mark. Okay, another wrestler, Kevin Nash. He started in WCW as the Incredible Oz, like Wizard of Oz. Yes, I know. Then he went and became Vinny Vegas. From there, he went to the WWF as Diesel. Then, of course, we all know he came to the WCW as his real name, Kevin Nash. And he really shined in the WWF as Diesel, became the WWF champion by defeating Bob Backlund at Madison Square Garden in like 3 seconds. And when he went to the WCW, he really shined because he got to become a part of the NWO. Now, Steve Austin, another wrestler who has multiple gimmicks. That's right, kids. Steve Austin, Stone Cold himself, was actually known as a few other things before he became Stone Cold. He started his WCW career as Stunning Steve Austin, and he was part of the Hollywood Blondes with Flying Brian, one of the greatest tag teams of all time. He went to the WWF as the Ringmaster. But of course, before he went to the WWF, he went to the ECW for a small stint and was just known as Steve Austin. Now, like I said, he went to the WWF as the Ringmaster, the $1 Million Champion with Ted DiBiase, but then he broke away from that terrible name and became the Stone Cold that we all love. Now, The Undertaker. Undertaker first started off as the Punisher. Many of you guys may or may not know that. Punisher, he was also known as Mean Mark Callis. He finally became to the WWF and became the Undertaker that we know and love so well. But then he also changed his gimmick for a short while in the early 2000s, and actually in year 2001, I believe, and became the American Badass. He reinvented the Undertaker gimmick by becoming the American Badass, cut his hair off, and now he's back to the Undertaker that we know and love so well. Kane is another wrestler. Glenn Jacobs is his real name. He started in WWF as Dr. Isaac Yankem DDS. He became Jerry the King Lawler's dentist when he had his foot shoved in his own mouth by Bret the Hitman Hart in a Kiss My Foot match. And then he became the fake Diesel, if you remember that. Then he finally became Kane. Now, the last wrestler I want to discuss, I'm not sure how much time I have left. Godfather. He's been known as Papa Shango. He turned into Kama, became the Godfather, then he became the Good Father with the right to censor. So it goes to show you that gimmicks can really work for you and gimmicks can really hurt your career. But the fact of the matter is that we need more gimmicks in wrestling because we are trying to get too real with wrestling. We all know it's a work. We all know it's a work. We all know it's make-believe, that it's not really real. We all know that it's scripted. We know that it's like a soap opera, like I just said earlier. So why not try to get back to that, to more gimmicks? I think that it could work if they would just give it a chance. Now, yes, some did not work, but some really did. But thanks for watching the video. This is Gold Izzy, and that was Wrestling with Gimmicks. Let me know what you think. Who was your favorite gimmick of all time? Who was your least favorite gimmick? Just let me know in the comments below. Anyways, this is Gold Izzy. Peace out.